The past year has been both one of the best years of my life, but also one of the hardest years of my life. So today I'm going to be getting really personal and taking you behind the scenes of what's been going on in my life that's been making it both the best and the hardest, and lessons learned along the way. If you're new around here, hi, I'm Scarlett Cochran. This is One Big Happy Life, where we help you find balance, build wealth, and live happy. Everything you need to create the life that you want. So last year in 2023, I published my very first book, put it out into the world. It was traditionally published with Penguin Random House. And pretty soon after that, I realized that I was burned out and I needed to take a sabbatical. So I took a 6-month sabbatical, basically from April to about November of last year. And then I came back from my sabbatical and started working again. And I actually did a series of 3 videos where I talked about that sabbatical. So how I went on the sabbatical, lessons learned from the sabbatical, how to create your own sabbatical, and also taking a sabbatical from the perspective of a business owner, and especially a business where you're the primary face and the primary driver of the business. So be sure to check out that series for more background information. So during last year, or this past year, which includes my sabbatical and then me being back from sabbatical, it's been a period of exploration and self-discovery. And so let's start by talking about what made this the hardest year, right? One of the most challenging years of my life. And I would say first and foremost was getting burned out. Never in my life had I experienced the physical exhaustion that comes with being burned out. It's never happened to me before. And also the mental almost fog that would come over me when I would want to sit down and do work. That's how I realized that I was burnt out, because I was so used to being super productive, and then all of a sudden I would sit down and I'd be sitting there for hours and nothing would come out. And that's the thing when you do the kind of work that I do, which is this very creative work that comes from inside of your own brain, that when you become burned out, it's like that fountain just sort of dries up and everything starts to feel like a slog. And I certainly was feeling really, certainly like not the normal joy and excitement that I feel when I think about the work that I do, which is why I did this work. So being burned out like that was a real challenge for me, especially being someone who, I guess, part of my identity was wrapped up in my ability to continually show up and do really innovative, creative work and always have ideas flowing and always have something to say. And so being burned out really threw me for a loop. And so I have to also then look at, well, what caused me to experience burnout? And that was writing and publishing this book. I have to be honest, although I love the book and I love that it's out in the world, and I know that it is helping so many people because I get messages from people on LinkedIn, on Instagram, via email, that this book is changing their life. It was a really challenging experience for me to actually write the book. It's the first book that I've ever written, and not only to write it, but to publish it while also doing this other creative work. And I think that that's really what led to the burnout, because the book was a major creative project, and I still had the other creative work that is One Big Happy Life. So the content that I create, the courses and products that I create, the coaching that I do inside of some of our programs, all of those things all require that creative work and effort. And I think I just took on one too many things, which is what led me to that point of burnout. So we've got the burnout. But then also, I didn't accomplish a major goal that I set for myself. So back in, I think it was 2000, I created a vision board, which you can actually see it right here in the corner of my office. And on that vision board, I put in a big circle, New York Times bestselling author, right? So that was this vision that I set for myself years ago. And so when I landed this book deal with this major publisher, in my mind, I'm like, great, I'm on the path to that. I'm going to have this thing, this goal that I set for myself. And again, this ties into a little bit of identity as someone that I set my goals, I always reach them. And so when I did not hit that goal with the publishing of this book, it did actually shake me, right? And not because and what was crazy about it wasn't that just that I didn't hit the goal, but also in starting to work towards the goal, right? Doing the things that you need to do in order to have a best-selling book, I realized that while I liked the idea, the gold star of having that New York Times best-selling book, I actually didn't want that, not in reality. And this is something that I frequently talk about inside of Wealth Builder Society and inside of The Life You Want, which is a program about designing your best life, that we have this idea of these things that we want, right? We want these markers of success. We set these goals, but what they actually are is kind of wishful thinking, or it would be nice if, like, oh, it'd be nice to do this, and sure, it would be great to have this. But how we know if we really want it is when we sit down and we look at what it takes to actually accomplish that thing. Then we decide, are we willing to actually do this work? Right? Do we actually want to have the thing because it means we're willing to do the things that are required? So that's one. Do we want the outcome, but it's not tied to an actual freely chosen value, right? So why is it that we want the thing? And in this instance, for me, I know when I asked myself the question, why is it that I wanted that? It's really just another success marker. And I've spent my entire life amassing success markers. It can be very, very addictive. But I also recognize that continuing to amass success markers is not the hallmark of a happy life. It's not the thing that I'm going to look back on and be the most proud of. It's not the thing that I actually value. When I ask myself the question, what do I want out of my life? What do I want to do for work? What makes me happy? What makes me fulfilled? That is not, becoming a bestseller is not necessarily a requirement. I don't necessarily have to check that box in order to do meaningful work that changes people's lives. And so I realized that I put this goal on my vision board for the wrong reasons, but that still didn't stop me when I didn't reach it, right? Because I didn't do the things I needed to do in order to reach it. It didn't stop me from feeling that sting of failure. And so feeling that conflict of, well, I know that I didn't really want this thing, but I still feel bad that I didn't accomplish this thing. And it's an important thing to realize because it's not just me that this happens to. Whenever you decide to go off of the defined path for success, you're going to have to deal with this mixed bag of emotions where you feel good about the choice that you made, right? You know that it was the right choice, but it still kind of also feels bad because there's still going to be a small part of you that holds on to this idea that, well, if I had done this thing, well, it could be, well, then I could definitely feel successful, or then other people would have to acknowledge my work and that my work is successful and then I've done something awesome. So it's, for me, in this case, this instant, it's an external validation thing why I chase success markers. And so I'm going to jump into why this is also the best year of my life, is that although it's difficult to experience it in the moment, I am glad that I had this experience because it was an important reminder for me of what I want from my life and of how to live in an aligned way, and that I can experience the discomfort of failure, quote unquote failure, and still and not let that mean anything about my work, about what's possible for my life, and certainly about my intrinsic worth and value, and not let the fact that I didn't accomplish a particular goal or I chose to abandon a particular goal, not letting that impact how I feel about my own life, not letting that define my success for me. And this is something that everyone who chooses to chart their own path in life, to find their own way to what feels good and right and happy and fulfilling, this is something that you'll have to encounter. Also, this is something that you'll likely encounter if you're trying anything, because we're not always going to be 100% successful 100% of the time, the very first time, which is also something that I tell myself. Like, I remind myself that this book was not an instant New York Times bestseller. That doesn't mean that I might not go on to write another book in the future where I'll be in a position to both want to have a bestseller outcome and want to do what is required in order to have a bestseller outcome, right? That is entirely possible. But it did not happen this time, and learning to be okay with that and to be okay with the decision that I decided to make made this past year one of the best years of my life. So let's talk about what else, right? So I talked about what made this a really challenging year. And a little bit about what made it one of the best. And it's that lesson that I just learned. But some of the other things that made this one of the best years of my life. Letting go of the shoulds is liberating. So going on that sabbatical and then coming back from the sabbatical and taking my time and being deliberate about how I was coming back to work. So not just jumping into doing things the way that I had always done them, which is just posting a whole bunch of YouTube videos and opening the doors to programs and inviting people in. I did not jump into that. I was much slower, much more deliberate. So I came back off of sabbatical in November. I normally take most of December off, and I almost didn't this year because I'm like, well, you just came off of basically a 6-month sabbatical, so why do you need to take December off again? So you should, right? There goes those shoulds. You should just hop back in and start working. But the reason why I take December off is because the holidays is my favorite time of year. It's the time where I most want to just spend time with my family, right? The kids tend to be off from school, like when Alexis was in school, right? She'd be off during the holidays. She'd be off for winter break. Joseph also tends to take a couple of weeks off at the end of the year. So that's really concentrated time where we spend time together, not necessarily going out and doing things, but hanging out and spending quality time together as a family. And I didn't want to give that up. So I still took December off. Yes, 2 weeks after I came back off of my sabbatical. And then I also didn't, again, rush back into doing things the way I'd always done them. I actually did my favorite thing, which is the dropping the balls exercise. And it's like you're starting from scratch and you're building this from scratch and you don't have to do things the way you've always done them. What could that look like? Right? So again, giving myself time and space to figure out what I wanted to do instead of just doing the shoulds. Right? Another thing that made this one of the best years of my life is reconnecting with myself and what I wanted. Because for the first time, basically ever, I didn't have any just like driving goals that I was searching and seeking and aiming for, because I had really accomplished with the publishing of that book every single kind of life dream that I had ever really had for myself when it comes to accomplishment and success. And so I had to ask myself, well, what does my life look like going from here? What do I want from my life? What do I want my work to look like? What kind of impact do I want to make in people's lives? Where do I want to continue to develop my expertise? And giving myself the freedom to ask those questions, again, without any shoulds, right? Because a lot of what used to drive me is this idea of really wanting to create a good life for this child, my daughter Alexis, that I had when I was 19. And so wanting to put her through college and pay for her car and do all of those things. And all of those things are done. And so just really sitting back and asking myself, what do I really want? Separating, and really figuring out who I am on the inside and not just who I've always been has been such a gift that I know is going to pay off over the next coming years and decades of my life. And I'm going to look back on this particular past year, and realize that this was a real pivot point for me. And it's not always easy to recognize those pivot points when they're happening. I know I didn't recognize it back when I was in the Marine Corps or back when I was in law school as these major life pivot points. But now that I've pivoted so many times, I realize that this is one of those moments. And I also realize that they all kind of felt crappy and uncertain in the moment. And it was only in living out the truths that I discovered during those periods of introspection that I then was able to create an amazing life, right? That then I'm still building on those decisions to this day. So that's what made this the best year and also the hardest year. And I think it's so important to recognize that when we are changing our lives for the better, it can also feel very challenging, very uncertain. Look on the outside like not much is happening when there is actually so much happening underneath the surface, so much happening behind the scenes. So the other thing that I wanted to share to kind of wrap up this video is, well, what exactly have I been doing for the past 5-6 months since I've come back from sabbatical? And, like I said, a business is like an iceberg, right? What people see on the outside, that's just the tip. And then there's so much going on underneath. So like I said, I took December off because I usually take December off. So that was minimal work. The one thing that I did do was I created a brand new financial goal setting course that I released exclusively for our members inside of Wealth Builder Society. So they all got access to that program to help them design their financial goals for 2024 and beyond. And we're going to make it publicly available soon, probably in the next couple of months. So stay tuned for that. So I did do that in December. Then I've also been spending time thinking about what I want my business to look like going forward. In my sabbatical video, I mentioned thinking through, where do I want to publish my work? Where do I want to continue making videos on YouTube? Do I want to create a podcast? Do I want to only write blog posts? Do I want to only be on Instagram? And it was important for me to ask myself these questions so that I wasn't just defaulting to old patterns and habits. So I spent some time thinking about that. We also, on the practical side, we changed email service providers. And so that is a major, massive, months-long undertaking to switch from one email service provider to the other. So that took up a whole bunch of time. We're working on updating our website, so redoing all of the landing pages, all of the technical backend, and we do all of this in-house. So all of that takes a lot of time too. And I've been working on updating and streamlining my video setup. So one of the things I decided to do for this video is I'm not going to edit it. It's just going to be direct from the camera right onto YouTube. And that's not something that I've ever done before, but I just decided I want things to feel easy and light. And that doesn't mean that I will never edit videos, but I also want to feel like I have the ability, that making videos doesn't have to be heavy and extremely time consuming, that I can make it really simple, create high quality content very easily to remove these perceived roadblocks, just to make it feel light, which is what I feel I need right now. And what I feel will be most helpful to the world, because what's important is not that I always take the time to make things as perfectly structured and curated as possible, which is my tendency to do on the perfectionism side, but to get the work out there, because this work can help people, right? Just sharing my experience in this video right now is making a difference in the lives of someone that is watching this. And maybe it's you, and I hope that it's you. So I completely updated my YouTube setup. And if you want to know what my YouTube setup looks like, you can head over to onebighappylife.com/YouTube and just download that for free. And so basically I wanted to just be able to sit at my desk. This is my desk, hit record, shoot a YouTube video. So that's what I'm doing right now. And that also took a couple of weeks to get things set up. Like something as simple as I actually have a dry erase board back here that I do a lot of business planning on when I feel like just kind of standing up and brainstorming. It looked ugly in the video setup. And so I had to just order new curtains and a curtain rod so that it can be hidden away when I'm shooting a video. Because I, again, want to just be able to shoot it at my desk. So the last thing that I've been working on is rebuilding my work habits and skills. This is something that I think no one really talks about, which is that, at least for me, when I took this hiatus from work, I feel like my skills really atrophied over time. I used to be able to just, first of all, just constantly, I'm coming up with ideas, constantly working on and massaging ideas so that there's always something ready for me to talk about and shoot. And so that pipeline sort of dried up in the time that I was on sabbatical. And I've been slowly getting back to what that was like for me. And I'm still not even there yet, right? So I'm rebuilding my work habits and skills, but also not just, again, defaulting back to what it was before, but rebuilding it around the life that I have now and the life that I want to have in the future. And that life includes stopping work at 3 o'clock when Reeves gets home from school. That includes playing tennis in the evenings and sometimes during the day. That includes working out because I want to continue to build my body back stronger than it was before, continue, becoming healthier like I have been over the course of this past year where I've lost 20 pounds from playing tennis. I want to continue that. I want to have work-life integration where my work and my life fuel each other and allow me to have the life that I want, do the work that I want to do, and change people's lives for the better and help people create lives that they love along the way. And I believe that I can have all of these things. And it's just going to take a little bit of extra work and habit building and a lot of introspection and reflection to make sure that I'm continuing on a path that is sustainable and aligned with my vision and my values. So that is it. This was the hardest and best year of my life, and I'm sure that this will not be the last hardest and best year of my life, but I wanted to share it with you so that you can see like really behind the scenes of what's happening in my life. Like I walk the walk. I don't just talk the talk. I walk the walk. I live the experience of reinvention. And this is what it looks like sometimes practically. All right. So let me know your thoughts down below and what you're working on in your life right now. And also what questions you have for me and what topics you'd love to see me cover in future videos. And I will see you next time. Take care.